This is the MBA Wire, episode 16. Did you know that the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," uses every letter in the English alphabet?
Inspirational MBA talk with successful alumni to motivate you during your application run. We go behind the scenes of every story, talk business, and show you why it's worthwhile to never give up on your MBA dream. And now, here's your host with the most, Mateo Chang.
All right, citizens of The Wire. Today, I cannot tell you how excited and honored I am to have as our guest Dr. Ricardo Betti. Dr. Ricardo Betti is renowned in the MBA world. He's the pioneer of MBA consulting. He's a reference to many top schools in the United States and in Europe. And he's an MIT graduate back in 1986, and today is the president of MIT Sloan's Club in Brazil. Dr. Betti, I am so honored to have you here as our guest today. Thank you so much for providing this interview to us. I've given our listeners a brief introduction about you. Why don't you add something there to let us get to know you better?
Well, first, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm really glad to collaborate with this initiative and to share with you some of my experience in the MBA universe. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, no, we're the ones to thank you. Now, I know we have a wonderful interview set up for you guys today, and we're just going to start off with a motivational quote, something that's helped you throughout the years. Do you have a motivational quote that you live by?
Well, I've always appreciated so much a quote from that famous Portuguese poet, Fernando Pessoa, which says, "Is it worth it? Everything is worth it if the soul is not small." Meaning that if we think big and we dream big, everything is worth it.
Everything is worth it. So the quote is it worth it? The question. It's a question that I think that we all have deep inside. And Fernando Pessoa states that everything is worth it if the soul is not small. So yes, students, think big, to dream big, and then you will achieve your goals in your life and achieve success. That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, how has this quote helped you, in the past? I mean, there's so much backstory. You did your MIT MBA back in 1986. You graduated in 1986, but I know that you are a doctor. So can you tell us what happened there? Like, how is that transition? What's the story there, just to get this thing going?
Well, I come from a middle-class family. We didn't have many resources. My mother was a school teacher. My father, he was an insurance broker, but they instilled me this ability to dream big and to study and to use study as a means to succeed in life. So I always was dedicated to my study, and I was able to get into the best medical school in Brazil, which is USP, University of São Paulo. And there I went to medical school, dreaming to become a surgeon and capable of helping others. This was another of my big drives in life, helping others to improve their health or their lives. But then during medical school, I got disappointed along the way. That was not my cup of tea. I had other colleagues that were so enthusiastic about medicine, but I was not. I wanted something else. I wanted to know the world. I wanted to travel, to know other cultures. That's what I wanted for me in life. And I had a period of inner search, looking for what could I do to dream big and think big, but not within the medical profession. So when I was about 28 years old, I found the way. I went to an MBA program I got sponsorship for my employer, which was Banco Itaú. I was a medical doctor in this institution. I took care of the employees, and I got that sponsorship. I went to MIT, and then I discovered a whole new world, the MBA world. I dedicated my entire career and my life to human resources and to helping others to see the light as I saw the light.
Wow.
And that's what I do for a living.
And that's what you do for a living. Yes, Dr. Betti has a successful consulting office in São Paulo, Brazil. He's also the author of the book called Worth It. Title was partly taken from this motivational quote, and I will have that up on the website. But let's go back. So people who do, the students that live in São Paulo, Brazil, understand how difficult it is to get into a top medical university like USP, the University of São Paulo. It's such a competitive school to get into, and you were able to do that. You graduated. You have your medical degree, became a doctor, and then you went through the entire process of getting a sponsorship from a bank, which is also not an easy task. And that's just amazing. It sounds like, if you look back, it sounds like success after success, but they were not without their challenges. What were some of the challenges that you faced in that transition from getting into a top school and then also getting your MBA sponsorship? How was that experience?
Well, apart from the initial challenge of getting a good education, good enough to get into medical school, which was only possible because since my mother was a school teacher at Dante Alighieri, I got a sponsorship to study there and get the better possible education. In order to maintain my scholarship there, I had to be always among the top 3 students of the school, and I did that. Then the next challenge during medical school was to survive the course without feeling that kind of motivation you need to be a real doctor. And again, I did it. I learned surgery, and I worked as a surgeon for 4 years. But then I had that obsession about changing careers. I did many courses. I did the SEAG at FGV. I did a hospital administration at São Camilo. I did labor medicine at Fundacentro, always searching for something else. And then this course of labor medicine got me into Banco Itaú. They needed doctors to do those occupational examinations, those admission medical examination. So I did that for some time, and because I was the only doctor there who had some study in business administration, I was promoted to, and I became the head of this medical area of Banco Itaú. Then after 2 years working as the head of this area, I learned that there was a sponsorship program for MBAs called Programa A. Then my challenge was to convince them to sponsor a doctor. I was not in the core business of the bank. So I knocked at the door of the human resource director, and I told him, I want to do an MBA program, but you are not eligible. This program is meant for bankers, for finance guys. And I said, well, but I want to be a human resources professional. I might take your place, for instance, in the future. And then he agreed to sponsor me. Maybe he didn't believe I would make it, but I did. Again, I studied like crazy. I didn't have coaches like today. You can find Paulo César to teach you English, you can find Júlio Cara to teach you math, but we didn't have these coaches at those times. We studied by ourselves. So I gathered with other candidates from Banco Itaú. We made up a study group, and we exchanged our knowledge, and we did it. And I got into MIT. Also, again, another difficulty, another obstacle there was to learn calculus when I was 29 years old, which is not easy, I can tell you. And I survived again, and here I am. after all these challenges. Now I do what I like, so I don't consider this a job or work. I really, it's for me, it's a great source of pleasure to show the way to other people and so how they can get there, even if they don't have resources, even if they don't have all the conditions, they can struggle for it once they dream big. That's the message. You have to dream big.
Dreaming big. Yeah, I mean, for you listeners out there right now, I'm just sitting here beaming and amazed at just this initial journey of Dr. Betti. It's just, having gone through so many difficulties, so many challenges, even back then. I mean, today we have the internet. We have so many resources that can help us along the way. We still find it difficult. I think sometimes you guys might look at us be like, these young guys are all spoiled, because back in the day, it was totally different. The scenario was completely different. You were limited to the information that you had, and you had to figure things out alone. Now, having to really muster the courage up to be able to knock on the at Banco Itaú's doors, financial institution as a doctor, and ask them to sponsor you. That in itself shows so much character. And my curiosity right now is, when you were applying, the schools are asking about your future goals. What were your future goals back then that you wanted to do an MBA?
Well, I told them this story I just told you about knocking doors. Mm-hmm. And I told them that I wanted to be a human resources professional, and I wanted to dedicate my life to human development. And that's perfectly true. That's what I do since then. My specialty is not just MBAs. I'm a specialist in human development. That's what I do.
Yeah, you started off first with surgery, and now it's just development. That's just I cannot explain. I cannot even express how in awe I am with this entire transformation. You transition from being a doctor, which is something that not many people can do. You went into an MBA, and like you said, learning calculus at the age of 29. I remember I had my first calculus class back when I was 19 years old. 10 years, and back when our minds should be fresh, right? That was already hard in itself. I cannot even imagine the struggles that you went through in order to really succeed in those classes. I mean, that's amazing. Excuse me. Before we get into a little bit about your MBA experience, I wanted to talk about your difficulties during the application process. I mean, like I said, internet today helps us so much. We have coaches like Paulo Cesar Moraes, who has the GMAT, who works on the GMAT and TOEFL. Julio Cesar working on the mathematics part. But back then, you didn't have any coaches. So how was it for you to do the GMAT and the TOEFL without any of these?
Well, I always relied very much in my intuition. And when I first saw the challenge of these essays, those tricky questions they asked back then, also the sizes of the questions were bigger than today. So we had to write a lot of pages and pages for each university. And my intuition told me that alone I would not have been able to produce an excellent work. I needed help. And there were no coaches, as you said. So I asked my best friend, also called Paulo. He was a medical doctor, and we were friends since we were 6 years old until the end of medical school. So he knew my entire life, and he was even smarter than me. And we invented there this profession of coaching MBAs, because I told him my stories, and he gave me feedbacks, and we improved the texts until, but the both of us thought the test was a killer. And that's what we did, and it worked, and I was accepted by 9 of the top 10 business schools. The only one which didn't accept me was Harvard, but it took longer than my other colleagues, 1 month longer. And they only said no to me when I insisted in an answer, because I was being pressured by MIT to register. So even in Harvard, they maybe they considered accepting me.
Yeah.
So the success was 90%, I would say, 90% of our strategy. And then I learned how important it is to have feedback from someone else, from, someone who really can understand you and can know what we are going to face, know about your life, your strengths and your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. That's crucial to produce a good application.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what we have to do today. And, in consulting is to really understand the student's story, the candidate's story, before we can actually provide feedback. I think is that like where you got the conception of becoming a coach and getting into the consulting business?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And as a coach, I learned that maybe one of the most important skills for a coach is the ability to listen, more than the ability to speak.
Nice.
The ability to listen is essential because you've got to enter into someone else's mind and life story in order to be able to give some meaningful advice.
Yes. Okay. It's not about what you think. It's always about the student. I agree with you. It's always about the student. So before we'll get back to this, guys. We'll get back to this whole consulting section a little bit later. I'm still in the whole application process, the journey. Other than the GMAT and the TOEFL and the whole on the essays, you had to go through the interview as well, right? MIT back then, did they do interviews before they accepted candidates?
Yes, they did. And but the interview, I believe it was much less structured than it is today. Mm-hmm. In my case, it was a phone interview. They didn't come here. So,
I mean, they didn't have that whole international the international network that they have today.
Exactly, and they didn't have technology, also Skype and this kind of thing.
True.
So we went through a phone conversation, but it was short, and maybe they just wanted to see if we were able to communicate in English. Or today I believe they do a much better work with interviews. It's much more complex and structured.
Yeah.
And it requires training, of course.
Yes, it does. I don't know. I kind of find it amazing how you were accepted 9 out of the top 10, and the one that didn't accept you is Harvard. I'm getting the feeling that Harvard missed out on this opportunity.
Well, I learned with the years. In the beginning, of course, I was frustrated not to be accepted there. But then, during the MBA program, I took 2 courses taking advantage of the cross-registration between MIT and Harvard. I could take 2 courses at Harvard, earning the credits. And I learned to respect and admire very much the school. And today, I believe they were right not accepting me.
Yeah?
Yes.
Why?
Because of the teaching style of Harvard, which is so different from MIT. In Harvard, it's 100% based on case studies. So your ability to defend orally your ideas and your arguments against sometimes hostile colleagues attacking your ideas and well prepared to do so, that give and take at high speed of verbal interactions is not my best skill. I am best when I do my research, when I'm able to read my books and then prepare some written material, then I excel. And that's more compatible with MIT. We have tests, exams in the traditional way. We also have some case studies, but not as much as in Harvard.
Right.
So I'm sure if I went to Harvard, I wouldn't have excelled like I did at MIT.
Wow.
So they were wise in not accepting me.
That is. Yeah, no, and actually, I remember in one of my audio tips, for those of you who have signed up for the email newsletter, I stressed the importance of how schools have to go through these filtering processes to provide you with the best possible education.
Exactly.
And I think you touched base on that. That's amazing because the fact that you were so self-aware on this aspect of knowing your strengths and your own weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually contributed to the right fit with the school that would provide you with the best possible potential for success in the future.
Exactly. And that's what we try to do with the clients. So we try to help them make this matching, should I call, between their profile and the school's profile. That's essential for success.
It's almost like a dating service.
Yeah.
You got to find the right match.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult than just finding the right match. But I mean, I think that's amazing how you are self-aware and how you can identify that, yes, it's not that, it's not that the schools don't want you. I think a lot of candidates have that misconception, the error in thinking, the school is, they think they're the best and they don't want me. That's not it. They're trying to provide you with the best possible education that will fit the type of person you are. And they don't want you to go pay for an education and live through hell for 2 years and then come out and say something bad about the school. That's not the point of an MBA program. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. So after you were accepted at MIT, what was your experience then, setting foot there for the first time?
Well, I have an additional hurdle, which was the fact that I was already married with 2 children. So my son was, when we went there, when we arrived there, he was almost 2 years old, and my daughter, she was 4 months old.
Wow.
So we had to settle and find we didn't have additional help as you do in Brazil with family and maybe some person helping at your home. There we were only by ourselves with 2 small children, and both had diapers and had to be breastfed. So these personal issues took a lot of energy in the beginning. And it was hard to conciliate with the idea of learning calculus at an old age and go back home and find that this baby's crying. It was not easy, I can assure you. And I only made it because my wife was outstanding. Yeah. She really took the course and she took the lead at home and took care of these kids.
That's amazing.
And she did an amazing job, and that's the only reason I made it at MIT.
Yeah, my son right now is 6 months old, so I can relate to you having a 4-month-old. Now, having a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, that's more than a handful. And I respect, my wife for everything that she's doing. So I can only imagine how much effort and support that she's giving you. I've interviewed other students who have gone to their MBA programs with their spouses or girlfriends and boyfriends, and they've all said the same thing. It is crucial to have the support of your significant other, and without it, it's very difficult to really make it, and just have the most robust experience possible. And that's just I tip my hat off to the strength that your wife had to help you through that.
Thank you. And one advice I usually give to people who are married without children is to have a plan for the other significant other, the other person. They must go with a plan for both, because otherwise, while one of them is busy at the MBA program and will necessarily in the beginning be an absent person from home, the other person can get depressed, feel alone, feel lonely, without a perspective of a future.
Yeah,
and that I've seen many marriages break down because of this breakup. Especially at MIT.
Yeah.
So because it's so intense, the course.
Yes.
So my advice is always to have a plan for both of them. Plan of study or doing some other courses or some activity, and I help them to plan this for both.
That is very important. I actually interviewed a few MIT students, and they said that you basically breathe knowledge there. I mean, just the moment you step there, it's just all about learning, and it motivates you, inspires you to study and learn. But if you leave your significant other behind without any purpose, just at home, and that's terrible for your own personal relationship. And I think it's a great thing that schools are really focusing on these venture programs where they can provide the support for spouses, for them to join clubs, to watch the classes.
Yes, that's excellent.
Yes, and then also, experience the entire MBA program without actually having to take any tests. I think it'd be better. I'm trying to convince my wife to do her MBA, so I can just kind of go and...
You go as a husband, as a significant other.
Yes. I would just like to go and enjoy my experience there. So could you tell us a little bit more about what it's like to be at MIT, and what's the campus like? I mean, just...
Well, the city of Cambridge, which is very close to Boston, is amazing. It's one of those places, those few places in the world where knowledge is what really matters. So people don't measure each other by titles or by the money, their bank accounts. They measure each other by knowledge. There are more than 45 universities only in the Boston area. If you consider Massachusetts, there are maybe hundreds of universities. It's a very university town, Boston, and you meet young people everywhere, all of them studying. So the atmosphere, the environment stimulates you to learn and to study and to be good. I really enjoy being there. Every time I go, in every reunion, I go frequently there since I've graduated. Every year I go to Boston. Sometimes I go twice a year because I really like the atmosphere, especially at MIT. The campus at MIT is very diverse. So in the same area, you can meet those highly focused engineering students that have their particular universe of concern about the most complex things in the world, technologies that we don't dream of. They are there. They are young. They are building the future, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there. We can talk to them, interact with them. Then there is the business school. It's a different world. Some people confuse when they talk about MIT. They think that the business school of MIT is a hardly quantitative engineering type of MBA program. And this is very far from the truth. Of course you can choose, if you like finance, mathematics, you can choose very quantitative courses if you want to. But the course is a small fraction of the course is made of core or compulsory courses. Most of the course is composed of electives. So you can choose whatever you wish for the most part of the course. For 3 semesters, you can select the classes you want to attend. So I wanted human resources and marketing. So most of my courses were in marketing and human resources. So only the first semester may be hard for those non-quantitative person, but they were tested through the GMAT. So that's also not a problem,
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to demystify this quant stigma of MIT.
Yeah, I had that same misconception about MIT as well. Only after I began interviewing other MIT alumni, when I understood that MIT is just it's the vanguard of technology. I mean, it's on the forefront. It's such an innovative school, and it's amazing. I always thought it was like really just engineering, number crunching people, and it's not. I think that is, and I've come to really like the culture there and the diversity at MIT. I think that is amazing. Right now, the biggest, most difficult question to answer, in my opinion, during the application process is, what is your fit, right? What is the student's fit with the culture of the school? How did you find your fit, during that MBA process?
nowadays it's much easier to find out with all the information you can exchange through the internet. For instance, you can investigate the schools. Also, there are neutral entities around the world like ClearAdmit, Accepted.com, and other many, the MBA Advantage, many other, Beat the GMAT, Poets and Quants. You have so many sources of information about the MBA programs that you can easily figure out the differences. I also stimulate people to go there. Today it's very easy to go there and visit the school and attend classes and visit the campus. So it's much easier nowadays to know the differences and find your match. But in those times when I applied, all that I have about the MBA programs was a yellowish book that I found at Alumni, that school. They had an advisory service back then. It was the only advisory service in Brazil. So they had an old book, like 10 years old book, telling about the top 10 business schools. That was all I knew about the schools. Wow. There was no internet, there was no nothing. And I couldn't afford traveling to know the schools.
It was expensive back then.
It was very expensive. So all I had was that very old book and not updated. So it was not easy at all. So what I tried to do when I was admitted to all these schools, I was in doubt between MIT and Stanford. So I went to talk to alumni, to the few alumni of these schools, and to get their impressions about their experiences. That's the best way I had to figure out about the match with the profile of the school. So I talked to many engineers who went to MIT and non-engineers. Also, I talked to many people who went to Stanford, and every one of them said that their school was the best one. So they didn't help. So I went. Finally, I found one professor at FGV who had studied in both schools. He had a master's degree from MIT and a PhD degree from Stanford. And I went there full of hope that he would solve my dilemma, but he didn't. He said, it's a tie. Both schools are excellent. Yeah. You can go to either one. So, because I was so undecided, of course there are differences, geographical differences, weather differences, and also lifestyle differences. But I was inclined to go to MIT because it's New England. I always had this thing for Europe. And I wanted, Boston is in some ways very similar to England. Yes. So also I had these opinions from many strong people in my bank, Banco Itaú. You know, it's a bank of engineers. So for them, MIT was the Mecca in the world. Yeah. And since they were sponsoring me, I told them, it's a tie. My wife also thinks it's a tie. So you decide. You are paying, you decide. And they chose MIT. And that was excellent for me, as I'm sure it would have been excellent also at Stanford.
Yeah. You know, it's I mean, there's so many takeaways here, and it is so hard to imagine how difficult it was to apply back then. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Dr. Betti graduated from MIT in 1986, which means his application process may have began as early as 83. 1983, back then, no internet, or it was just, you know, computers were beginning, you know, their innovation. And the only resource that you had was a thin notebook comparing the top 10 schools that was at least 10 years old. That means that pamphlet, that notebook would have been written back in 1973-ish. That was before I was born. Can you imagine? You know, I can't even fathom, you know, the lack of information it was back then. I mean, I think we are spoiled in a way that, you know, you can just Google something, you can find everything you can. Like you mentioned, you know, you have Accepted.com, ClearAdmit, you know, Beat the GMAT Club. You have so many places that can provide you with information today. And back then, you know, to have to rely on just a notebook to find the fit what did you do? You went and you sought information from alumni. And they've all said the same thing. They're amazing schools, Stanford, MIT, and I find it very interesting that you ended up going to a school without really knowing the fit as much, but you discovered it while you were at MIT. The way you've spoken about MIT today, when you look back at it, I feel that this was just part of who you are. The school really you really identify with what the school believes in, and I think that's just amazing. That's amazing. How has MIT helped you now in your career after your MBA program?
Well, as I told you, I after a while, I started to go back to Boston to the reunions. Every 5 years, there is an official reunion of your class, but you can also go to other reunions there. Also, I tried to attend free courses, short courses there for executives every time I had the chance to go. And when I decided with some other friends to found the Brazilian Sloan Alumni Club, because also there wasn't one in Brazil, when we founded this club, we started to bring some professors of MIT to Brazil and to take the opportunity when they came to Brazil, because they have many business here, also consulting assignments here. When we knew that they were here, we made lectures and organized workshops with our community. So that's how the club was born. And today we do that normally, regularly. I have not only from American teachers, but also Brazilian celebrities. We bring them to speak to our students to make the experience of being an MIT alumnus more valuable throughout your life. So we have brought ministers like Maílson da Nóbrega to speak about the economy and to tell about Plano Real. Then we brought Luiz Paulo Rosenberg to speak about the Itaquerão project of the Corinthians project he was responsible for. We brought Lawrence P., which is a Chinese-Brazilian entrepreneur, is the biggest exporter of wheat in Brazil.
Wow.
And also he spoke for our community. And so many other guys. We did seminars about health, about water, about big data. Big data was last month in Oracle. Now, the next month we are organizing. In August, we will have lawyers from a big Brazilian law office. They will speak about the anti-corruption law and the responsibility of the directors and CEOs, the personal liability of these guys. So we are always organizing seminars and workshops about the most varied issues that interest for managers in order to keep this all experience of being affiliated to MIT a valuable experience for life. And also we exchange job places and opportunities among the community before it goes public.
Yeah.
So also we help to fill jobs, and it's a powerful community, I should say so. We are only 300 people, but 300 very active people and very helpful to each other.
Wow. I'm actually going to have to start sneaking into these these seminars and workshops. That sounds amazing. So Dr. Betti is also the president of the MIT Sloan Alumni Club of Brazil. You guys have 300 members right now, and growing, because every year, any MIT alumnus who is interested in partaking in this amazing club can. And being able to having to have that MBA experience continue after your MBA, I think is amazing, because I know of alumnus who miss it, who miss that experience, and they kind of look back and they, you kind of really you miss that whole experience. And having these clubs in your home country, whether it be in Brazil, India, Europe, Africa, being able to be part of one of these alumni clubs it's very important to maintain and to continue your pursuit of knowledge. And I think that's amazing that that you guys had that initiative to go ahead and found this club and gain the support of MIT, and just being able to pull in these amazing speakers to talk about relevant information that are valid today, that are affecting our lives today. That's just too awesome. I have actually a quirky question for you, and this is one of the questions that I kind of like. If you had a time machine, you can go back to either your application process or your experience at MIT. Is there anything you would have done differently, or what would you have said to yourself? If you had a minute or two to talk to yourself.
Well, one thing for sure I would have done, I would have studied more English to get there better prepared to communicate in English when the classes started. Mm-hmm. Although I had a good basis of English from Cultura Inglesa, which allowed me to do well in the tests, I was not very fluent either to speaking or listening. So I had an extra difficulty in the beginning. I had to take notes of everything I could, and I recorded the classes. You remember Cacique Juruna?
I don't.
With that radio, with that recorder. It was a leader of Indians in Brazil. Uh-huh. And he went to the Congress with his recorder to record what the other people said, and then he would charge them showing the recordings.
Right.
So I was kind of Cacique Juruna, because I was recording every class so that I could listen then again at home and understand. That was in the very beginning, in the first 3 months, until I got fluent in English. Mm-hmm. But that advice I give to everybody, because it's possible to do well in the tests and not be totally fluent. So yes, you should invest very much energy in the beginning before you go. After you get approval, you still have maybe 6 months to go. So you could invest time in that period of time to get more fluency in English. That's one thing I would do.
You every minute that goes by, you keep amazing me with your experience and with your innovation back then. Watch this. Check this out, listeners. Back then, recorders are not the recorders that we see today. That app that you have in a smartphone, that fits in your pocket. Back then, the recorders were slightly larger.
And clumsy. Clumsy, yeah.
Clumsy, I know. It's like this. I've taught English for about 12 years now, 13 years, teaching English in varied forms, teaching executives. Today I teach, help teach the TOEFL to MBA candidates. And I have yet to see someone record one of my classes, just the audio, because the video it's not too good. I'm not a handsome person, but just the audio. I have yet to see a student to record an audio, and I think you have just given a golden nugget here of advice. It's just amazing. If you record your classes in English, you have that as a reference to listen again and continue improving your English. It is a non-stop process. You will learn English today, you will learn English tomorrow, and continue to do so for the rest of your life. You will not stop. And it would be great to have this type of a reference in your hands. You don't have to. You don't have cassette tapes or 8 tracks the way back in the 1990s and 1980s. The way Dr. Betti had to. You would have to save all your cassettes, right, and have them all labeled. Today we have data. You have pen drives. You have hard drives. It's easy storage. You have the cloud. Now you don't even have to carry a pen drive around. And I think that's amazing advice, Dr. Betti. If you can, record your classes, use that as a reference for your future. Thank you for that. That was amazing.
You're welcome.
On that note, I would like to, with your permission, take a break. Let's take a 2 or 3 minute break, and then we'll continue this in a little bit. And I want to get into the whole consulting world of the MBA now. This is a very interesting story, and I think it's going to be full of golden nuggets here for you guys. And we'll get back to this in a few minutes. How about that?
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks for tuning into the MBA Wire. Would you like to know more? Visit us online at thembawire.com today and leave your questions and feedback. While you're there, sign up for an exclusive free audio series to help you strengthen your MBA interview. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the MBA Wire.